What if being a great power was a bad thing in Europa Universalis? We're going to find that out today with a little mod that I made that gives penalties to great power nations, increasing in severity as their great power rank increases. If you like fun ideas like this in EU4, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Question of the day, lads. What is the first nation that you plan to play as when you boot up EU4 when 1.35 and domination drop for the first time? Let us know in the comments down below. To put into perspective how truly painful this is going to be, let's take a look at Ming here, and you can do a little bit of quick math to see that these guys are going to have a minus 80% trade efficiency, production efficiency, tax modifiers, so their economy is going to be absolutely in the gutter, but they're also going to have some military malices as well as that 25 times 8 stability cost. Also, their monarchs are going to live 80% shorter, so basically they're going to have a very hard time keeping their stability up. You can see here that they're minus 40 discipline, so they're going to get absolutely demolished in wars, and my goal is basically to see who comes out on top despite all of these malices after a couple hundred years. So receiving the malices day one is going to be Ming, the Mamluks, England, Ottomans, France, Castile, Timurids, and then Aragon. Of course, with Aragon only receiving one of them because they are the lowest on the great power list. And all of them are the same, it's just one extra tier for each tier up in the great powers list. But you guys know the drill, we gotta go up to speed 5 and unpause. And immediately after unpausing, you're gonna see here that even with their armies turned all the way down, the Ming is barely gaining any money with a very nice amount of money in the bank right now. But if they turn their army on, they are instantly losing a ton. And I mean a ton of money. You can see here that these malices are being applied, and in order to boost their stability just up to 1, they need 335 mana. So yeah, it's going to be tough for them. And though they are only in the 8th spot receiving the lowest amount of malices, Aragon definitely going to be losing their great power status very soon. The British are absolute cowards and just gave up Maine without a fight. Absolutely despicable behavior. And despite the malices, the Ottomans have a very low army quality. They are losing money while at war, but yeah, it's only a matter of time before Constantinople enters the fray, so to speak. How the heck are they occupied by Poland? How is Poland in a war with Byzantium? Poor Wallachia is getting annexed like 3 years into the game. And with their conquest, the Ottomans go up to the number 2 spot, which means that their malices have increased from 85 discipline all the way down to 70 discipline as they gained, I think 3. I think they were the number 4 great power before. So yeah, they're not going to be doing well for very long. The first time they get into a war with somebody like Poland, Lithuania, and or the Mamluks, they're going to get rolled. At least I expect that to be the case. Of course, I say that, but the Mamluks are the number 4 great power, so probably not going to roll the Ottomans. So that kind of creates an interesting dynamic, you know, a great power versus a great power. It looks like if they have an ally who is like the number 9 or whatever, may actually be the move. That's going to be the way that people survive in this run. Aragon is out. They were absolutely dismantled. Castile took a ton of land from them and the personal union on Navarro, which is what the war was about in the first place. But you can see here Muscovy enters the fray as the number 8 great power now. Good luck, Muscovy. You're gonna need it. And before I unpause, just take a second to admire this horrible border war that happened in the former nation of Novgorod. Absolutely just disgusting. Or beautiful, depending on how you look at it. I mean, honestly, I would actually maybe even lean more towards beautiful. And here we go. We have the inaugural war between the Ming and Oirat. Normally, it's Ming declaring war on Oirat to force them tributary, but actually it appears Oirat has declared war on the Ming this time around for their core over here in this region. And so far, nothing interesting has happened, but I imagine it is going to get very hard for them very quickly. Yeah, you can see here the Ming are losing their leaders. They just had 2 leaders die in the last like 10 years. Their stability is in the gutter and it's not going to get any better, or they're going to have to spend all of their admin mana. Obviously, they're going to run out eventually, even collecting as much tribute as they are. And you can see here they're making some losses, and their army is very, very expensive. And they just declared bankruptcy. I was going to say, I actually paused it to show you guys the loans. They just declared bankruptcy. As soon as they got out of that war. It's kind of weird. They only had like 5 loans, so I don't know why they declared bankruptcy. Maybe just to get it out of the way, so to speak. But where is it at here? Here it is, bankruptcy. So add those malices onto the ones here, and the very, very low mandate. And you have yourself a Ming who is primed to explode. Ah, very smart. You can see here Castile, despite struggling very hard with their civil war here, is no longer a great power, so they actually do not receive the malices that they originally did. I was about to show that off. I don't really know exactly what happened to them. It just looks like it's neck and neck for the bottom like 5 or 6 here. You can see Poland has fallen a bit, but France is there. But now Timurids are in the great powers. So we're going to see who struggles next. And despite running a serious deficit with quite a few loans, they are continuing to roll. The Ottomans, that is, they just annexed Epirus, and now they are about to annex Serbia. So sad to see the Serbians go, but they are definitely going to become part of the Turkish Empire. Meanwhile, up in the north, Muscovy trying to create as much border war as they possibly can, pushing well into the Baltic states, and Timurids annexing a few of their subjects. So clearly Shah Rukh did not cause that imminent destruction that he usually does, and they're actually over the Himalayan regions here. I actually don't know what these mountains are called, and they are into India. And that conquest has actually put them up to the number 4 spot, but like I said, the bottom like 4 or 5 of the great powers is just constantly fluctuating. So we're going to let a little bit of time pass and kind of see where things go once things get a little more solidified, or not really, because people are just going to keep collapsing as they get more higher up in the great powers list, much like the Ming, who is getting full occupied by a Manchu horde. And I have to point it out whenever I see it, a Ducal Prussia, beautiful, beautiful Catholic Prussia over here, actually pushing all the way over into Pomerania. So good for you, Poland. You got a pretty interesting subject over there, but he's actually disloyal. So it would be very interesting to see a free and independent Ducal Prussia who is not a member of the HRE. And if he's not a member of the HRE, that means that he can be the king of Prussia. He doesn't have to be the king in Prussia, right? So yeah, Zhangzhou over here pushed into this region, Shenyang in that place over there, and they took the land. And meanwhile, it looks like China is having a couple of issues with some rebels. And I think you guys know what that generally means whenever you see a lot of rebels in a low mandate China. And lads, it's time for a big old war between a bunch of great powers. This time Austria with their personal union of Hungary attacking Bohemia, and France is involved. And the reason might surprise you, and that is correct. It is because Bohemia has got a personal union of France, and obviously Austria is going to contest that. And my friends, I think we're going to see Austria take France as a subject. Now with a 52-year-old leader, and they will inevitably be like the number 1 or number 2 great power, it's not going to stay because he's going to die very young, especially considering all the malices for this here, minus 10% per rank. So yeah, it's interesting, but I don't think it's going to have any implications in the long game. Just wanted to point it out. Now, I didn't really expect this to happen, but during this war, a bunch of other wars broke out. Austria is now defending against Burgundy and England, and there is a ton of people involved, namely Castile, England, Poland, Lithuania, and a ton of HRE princes, like half of them. And the HRE princes are actually part of a coalition war. So yeah, Austria is done for. And obviously France hates them. They are a minus 100, and their relations are actually amicable. So they might be able to keep it, but we'll see how things go with that. And of course, the Ming explosion is well underway, and it will continue to progress as Ming exists. And those wars ended just about as you would expect it. You can see our beautiful Austria here split in half by Styria, and France ended up getting conquered quite a bit more by England, taking back some of their cores and even taking a little bit more land bordering Paris. Lads, we are a little over 100 years in, like 105 give or take. You can see Castile is doing fine over here, so is Portugal. Ottomans are getting dominated by Austria. France and Great Britain are still doing their thing. Ducal Prussia, who is now independent, has pushed into Poland, and Brunswick has pushed into Denmark, with Gotland getting some land over here in Ostergotland, or however it's pronounced. I always get corrected, and Kalmar. So we have Gotland, who has got land. Their unit model is also a very suave looking man with a very nice haircut. Meanwhile, Muscovy continues to expand and then collapse. This time Denmark has pushed them back from Archangel or Archangel or whatever that place on the coast is called. No surprise, the Ming is gone, but we do have a Manchu that formed up in the north, competing with a Korea and Oirat, who is getting squished by a Chagatai. Bengal was quite a bit smaller, but because Bahmanis here has full annexed Vijayanagar and everyone else down in the south, and they are actually in the great powers. Or at least they were last time I looked. It doesn't look like they are this time, but instead we have a QQ up here And the reason why Baumanis would not be in the top is because they have not embraced any institutions past feudalism. So despite the fact that they have almost 700 development, they are not in the great powers, but they will be soon enough. But yes, this war between Austria, Hungary, and Ottomans should go well for Austria. It looks like they have occupied everything. They even have Constantinople. So we'll see how that affects them in the long term. I'd be curious to see if anybody around them is going to gang up on them like this Genoese Pontic steppe or maybe a Mamluks, but you know, only time will tell. And literally within seconds of me unpausing, Genoa declares a crusade against the Ottomans. So yeah, Genoa is going to steamroll them, especially with their allies of the Pope Man, and we also have Tuscany involved, both of them of which have basically an army the same size as the Ottomans. So yeah, the Ottomans are going to start the spiral very soon. Oof. The Ottomans are getting destroyed. Not only did Genoa and Austria completely dismantle them, and they gave back all of Scanderbrough's lands, and they also released a tag over here, but it looks like QQ has gotten in on the fun and is probably going to take quite a bit of their development from Anatolia. Before even piecing out of the war with QQ, the Ottomans have already dropped from number 1 to the number 3 slot, and it looks like they're probably even going to drop entirely off the great power list after that. That being said, they will then lose all of the modifiers and realistically might be able to come back because they're going to have a lot of cores on these guys. So there might be a little bit of rubber banding between nations that are great powers, fall from grace, and then kind of get back up into there. So curious to see how that works out. And now 200 years into the game, we have Castile well out in first with Portugal in the number 2 spot. No surprise when we take a look here and see their colonial empires that they have built, but Great Britain maintains the 3rd spot with QQ in the 4th spot. More on that in a second. With Baumanis in the 5th, which I had mentioned before, Ottomans have actually climbed their way back up into the 6th spot, followed by Poland and then Bengal in the 8th spot. Now, interestingly enough, Lithuania has broken free from Poland, so Poland does not have the PU, which would actually put them higher up on the Great Powers list. Regardless, they're doing very good, and Muscovy is now a 1-province minor in Russia. The steppes over here and China as a whole are absolutely just disgusting. I have not seen border guard like this in a very long time, and I don't think this would look any different if it wasn't a modded run. Also, it's Tonkin time. As I had mentioned, Baumanis and Bengal, 2 of the great powers, bordering each other over here in India. I feel like it's been a minute since we've seen a big Bengal, so I don't know if I would say a welcome sight, but it's nice to see a little bit of something that we're used to from the past, right? Kind of bringing back good memories. Ethiopia doing well over here, but all of this land is trash development, so they are not a great power. As is the Congo, in control of a very large portion of the entire continent of Africa, but again, all trash land with like 3 development, so no great power for them. South America is some Portugal, but a lot of Castile, and North America is mostly Portugal, but Castile over here, and the left coast always seems to go to Spain. They must really like high taxes, I guess. But that is going to be yellow on the coast over here and yellow in Canada. And then Portugal is going to be in control of Mexico, Louisiana. And then the east coast over here is actually Britain and France, and then a little bit of Castile. And it's definitely contested, but I think Castile is probably going to be taking it. Oh, and definitely the Caribbean is Portuguese, as well as a couple of Norwegian provinces over here that I almost missed. So I'm glad I saw that. As I had mentioned, the Ottomans have crawled their way back to the 6th spot, actually kicking Genoa mostly out of Greece, and Naples actually is becoming a kind of regional power over here, eating Scanderbrough's land, pushing over into Dalmatia, into Tunisia, over here into Sardinia, so doing pretty good with Tuscany up here to the north and Milan up north of them. They were actually a great power for a while, as was Burgundy, but it looks like this Hainaut, or however that's pronounced, has taken over a lot of the lowlands, splitting it with Holland. Also, I really like this chunky mines here, that elector, the theocracy from 1444. I don't know how they got so much land, but here you go. Also, Bohemia sticking their fingers out in every direction they can. Looks like a monkey, like he's got his arms up in the air like that. At least that's what I see. I don't know. Prussia does still exist, though not in any major capacity. It's their capital of Danzig, and Gotland has got a little bit more land over here, controlling a few areas, though they're being encroached on by Norway and Lithuania, also Prussia. But I think Prussia is their ally. Also, Prussia has some land over here in Denmark, so things are weird. This is a very weird run. And as for the Reformation, a lot of it kind of petered out in Germany, though it looks like France and England are the primary Protestants, but the north up here, actually Prussia decided to go Protestant. For a minute there, Brandenburg was actually Protestant. I thought it was funny we had a Protestant Brandenburg next to a Catholic Prussia. It's just kind of like a weird way of looking at things. But yeah, Germany is mostly Catholic, actually, with the northern parts Protestant, France and Great Britain are Protestant, and we don't have any Reformed really, and we did not have Anglican this time around. And down in the south here, we've got some of the old Orthodox boys of Coptic. Miaphysite, I believe, is kind of the traditional name for it, taking up quite a bit of land and actually conquering some land up into Arabia and converting it. And it's Tonkin time in southern China, like I said, and they have converted a lot of the land to Buddha, finding inner Zen. Meanwhile, the New World is animist, which is the natives, and then Catholic for the rest of it, though somehow Michigan is Protestant. Just Michigan, though. And here we have it, Mexico, the most massive Mexico I think I've ever seen the AI do. From Alaska all the way down into Colombia, even past like Ecuador into like Bolivia or wherever this area is. So a very massive Mexico, also a very massive Chile, because Portugal had a definite collapse on the empire front. Cuba, independent as well. The only colonies that I can see here are these ones over here that don't even have enough to form a colonial nation, so hurts for them. And I almost missed this. We have an independent Florida that has everything except for southern Florida. It's even pushing Florida out of Florida for Florida. I would not say that Asia is much better than it was before, though I will say I'm happy to see that Balmain has conquered Bengal and formed Deccan. It is a cool tag, and I'm always happy to see it. Japan has also formed, and Chi or however this is pronounced, is splitting China with Delhi, who's really big, and Dai Viet down in the south, who I think formed from Tongan, so it was no longer Tonkin time, so they went back to being regular Vietnam. However, QQ is all the way over into here with Vietnamese West Siberia bordering them, looking pretty good next to Genoese Eastern Europe. So lots of interesting stuff going on, but QQ pushing the Ottomans mostly out of here is pretty good, splitting it with Poland and a little bit of Genoa, but I think Genoa had these provinces for quite a while. Taking a look a bit more to the west, you're going to see Italy is united under a very strong Tuscany, and Bavaria has united all the way from Bavaria all the way over into Switzerland and Hungary. They have pest, which is kind of funny. Then up here in the north, we have a Westphalia that was formed by mines of all people, and a one-province minor, Bohemia, in Brandenburg, or at least Brandenburg's lands. Poland continued to dominate over in Russia. I'm actually very surprised. They were probably the nation that was a great power for the longest period of time and managed to somehow handle it gracefully, though QQ Ruthenia is a thing. Okay, I guess. Would you guys rate my Norway? I like this Norway. I think this is a nice looking Norway. You guys know Norway, the nation with their capital in Reykjavik. Of course, we have a Great Britain, with Norway having one province off the coast over here in the Hebrides. But without a doubt, my favorite thing that I have seen today is Lotharingia, formed by the AI and did very, very good. They are currently losing a war to Tuscany, but man, they did really well. Well enough, in fact, to make them the #1 great power. Right in front of Delhi and Deccan, two Indian nations, finishing in the top 8. I'm very happy to see that. Castile was the #1, but they have been going on a bit of a downward spiral. I assume that being the #1 great power for as long as they were really finally caught up to them. But Mexico in the 5th spot, a new world nation, followed by Poland, who remained in the top 8 for like literally the entire 400 years of the game, followed by Tuscany, who has basically just Italy and then parts of the Balkans, and then Westphalia in 8th spot, which is basically just Germany. But every single nation on here has over 2,000 development, and I think that is quite respectable considering the fact that they have some very gnarly malices. Lotharingia has these negative malices right here times 8 and managed to maintain the #1 spot, all the while being the only Protestant nation on the entire continent outside of Great Britain, which I think also adds to the impressiveness of it. The rest is all Catholic. The New World is all Catholic, the entire New World. It's Catholic down under in Australia, but also Australia is Catholic. And China is even worse than it was before, with Buddhists all the way well past the Tibetan plateau up here into the Tartary steppes, almost even into Tanatuva, which I think is respectable as well. Orthodox remains, but it is not the state religion of any nation in the world, except for the one province minor, Novgorod, that is hanging up here in this Mezin province. So at one point we had a Manchuria that had formed and united the Manchu culture group, and I believe they have to become Qing in order to pull Manchu into the Chinese group. I think that's a thing, but I could be wrong. Also, Vietnamese joined the Chinese culture group, and this Jibei or however it's pronounced converted a ton of the land out here. Turns out that Mesopotamia is rightful Kurdish clay, and there are a lot of Kurds in the area. And of course we have Kazakhstan, greatest country in the world. All other countries are in fact run by little girls. And Swedish is the primary Scandinavian culture, pushing the Norwegians down here into the tip of the second tip of the penis that is Scandinavia. And the Dutch have actually taken over some of the Flemish, and let's be honest, lads, Flemish is just Dutch with more steps. The New World is, for the most part, Portuguese, Mexican, and Castilian. We do have some English and some French and a little bit of American, though it's actually just up here in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. So yeah, Americans in upstate New York and Pennsylvania, and Canada. We also have some Danes, of course, you can't forget about the Danes. And in South America, Platinian is the culture in the entirety of the northern portion of the continent, and Brazilian is actually the culture for basically everything outside of Brazil. And before you guys get your panties in a bunch, I understand that this region over here is Brazil. But fun little videos like that are what I really enjoy making the most. And if you guys have a suggestion of like a modifier or something that we could change to make an interesting video, make sure you leave it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed it, make sure you like the video and subscribe for more content to come. And a huge shout out to the patrons and channel members who keep this channel going. If you want early access to these videos and exclusive Discord benefits, make sure you check out the link in the description or the join button below the video.